and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Martin Willis, your host, and we have Thom Reed coming up in the first hour, and he's going to be talking about being inducted in the Great Barrington Historical Society, about his case, his family case. That's kind of interesting and exciting. So he'll be coming up in the first hour. In the second hour, it's kind of a strange thing. We've never tried anything like this. We have Randal Nickerson. He's going to be live streaming from his own website, and he's going to have a chat room on his own website that's being set up right now with questions and answers about his new documentary, and that is for the Ariel School Phenomenon. And that'll be in the second hour. That's only going on for about a half an hour. So at 9:30, we're going to be taking calls, and that is at the number 603-967-4030. I'll be giving that number out again as we go along. Now, Randy's chat room is on his own website. That link is right on our website, so you can go right to it. It's too long for me to tell you what it is. But that's not to be confused with our own chat room right on our sidebar. Go to podcastufo.com, and you'll see our own chat bar that you can talk to the guest in the first hour right there. Okay, and I want to thank everyone who's helping us by supporting the show and subscribing to us. It's only $1 a month or more to hear the second half of the show. You can go to our website again, and all that information's right there. And we have that all set up for iTunes and all kinds of other media players. So you're going to be all set with whatever you have, except Stitcher. We can't figure that part out. So I want to thank everyone again for listening, whether you're supporting us or not. Each and every one of you is very important to us. And now we're ready to roll in the news with Alejandro Rojas from Open Minds. How are you, Alejandro?
Good. Am I important to you, too?
Somewhat. Yes, of course you are.
Oh, I just wanted to hear it.
You are. Hugs.
I knew it, but I wanted to hear it.
Can we have a digital hug here?
Yeah, here we go. There you go, buddy.
Yeah, that was a good one. So we got to squeeze through the news kind of fast this week. So what's going on?
Let's do it. So one of the stories we wrote about recently is from 2013, but it's taken MUFON that long to analyze it. No, actually, the MUFON Scientific Board puts out an annual report on the top cases. And they're backed up, so they just got the 2013 top cases out. And one of the top cases includes a video, and everybody loves videos. So I posted what was essentially their idea of the best UFO video from 2013. It shows a bright light and a smaller light dropping out of it that's blinking. The light kind of moves up and then moves down and out of sight quickly. And this was in Boise, Idaho, December 24th, 2013. It was about 9 p.m. And so the video is interesting. It was taken by a couple who had spotted it while they're driving, so they stopped, rushed home to get their camera, and were able to catch this orb coming out of it. They said they saw another similar thing prior to this. But what's really interesting about this case is that there were two other groups of people that saw the same thing that evening, and they reported pretty much exactly the same thing, seeing this bright red light with this other light coming down and dropping out of the bottom. The second set of people were some people out driving around looking at Christmas lights who saw it. And then the third set was a mother, a stay-at-home mom, who went outside to have a smoke and saw this, and she called her kids to come out and watch it with her. So pretty interesting. It finally was It was investigated. He couldn't find any local airport or Air National Guard or anything who could determine what it was. But a really interesting case. What's more interesting is that MUFON's Roger Marsh, who posts sightings on OpenMinds.tv, posted a sighting this week from Oregon. And this was on March 4th at about 8:15 p.m., just this year, so just the other day, and a very similar description. This object that was hovering there and a smaller object coming out of it. So pretty interesting that this similar report came from this 2000, similar to the 2013 one.
Yes, and I know all these stories are linked in our show notes to your website, but I do want to say that if someone goes to podcastufo.com, right on the homepage or in our show notes, you will see that video that you were talking about in Boise, Idaho. And that is, I always get a thrill out of seeing those UFOs when the thing drops out of them, or more than one thing drops out of them. I mean, that's makes it even more unexplainable, but in a way, it's almost like a drone type of situation. I mean, it kind of makes some type of sense.
Well, that a drone would have something dropping out of it and kind of coming back up and dropping down again?
No, meaning the drone. It's like a drone dropping out of the larger object. Yeah.
So it's really weird. Definitely a weird case. And these days, video isn't enough. You need that good witness testimony, and especially to have multiple witnesses is a great thing. So really interesting case.
Right. And so what else is going on?
A couple other videos. There's a lot of people who have seen this Argentina TV station with a UFO in the background.
Oh, yeah.
And that's created a lot of buzz. However, unfortunately, it turned out to be a hoax. So,
how the heck did they hoax that?
Well, you just replace the video in the background. They added. So Lee Spiegel wrote about it, and the TV station got a hold of Lee Spiegel and said, here's the real video from our newscast. And he provided them with the video of that segment of the newscast, and you don't see a UFO in the background. So somebody, CGI'd that UFO in the background, unfortunately.
And it looks really good, too.
Yeah, it looks really good. It was a really interesting one, but that turned out to be a hoax. Wah, wah.
Wah.
Another one that is a suspected hoax, but nobody's quite sure yet, is one that is out of California in the Silicon Valley. This is a video that was taken on March 5th, so it's also recent, and this was taken with a drone. So this drone is flying around. It has a 4K camera on it, and it caught something whipping by. The drone was about at 265 feet, and it's a really kind of interesting video. It's a kind of a shocking video.
It is. So, now, has anyone explored, don't yell at me when I say this, but has anyone thought about an insect? I did watch the video.
Of course people have thought an insect.
You know what I mean, like flying real fast.
I won't yell at you, I'll just be condescending.
Okay, that's good. I'm used to that. Yeah.
No, but yeah, there's a lot of people. There's a guy in one of the California MUFON guys thinks it might be CGI because he thinks that he sees it disappear here and there. However, others feel that it could be, well, a lot of people feel it's a genuine UFO. Some people think a bird. Some people think a bug. A lot of the MUFON guys, including the Star Team head and Mark D'Antonio, the photo analyst, feel that it's probably a bug. And I think that it might be a bug. I think when people look at it, it looks so white. It's white and it looks kind of stunning, so they think, oh, it's definitely not a bug. But I think as bug zooming by the camera that's, illuminated could look like this. So it could be a bug, and I'm kind of leaning that way myself.
Yeah, and it's awful hard, even though that was a 4K camera, it's awful hard to do a frame by frame on that. I tried to do that frame by frame on YouTube, and it's not easy.
No, even though it's 4K, high resolution, is seeing so small, moving so fast. In our story, Jason, who wrote it, put a still so you could see, and even at 4K, it's difficult to make anything out.
Righto. Well, I know you did a great job blazing through the news this week. And so we just want to make sure we get a pretty good hour in with Thom. And thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And we can chat more and have more fun next week, possibly.
All right. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. All right. So thanks so much. And everyone, if you hang in there, we'll be right back with Thom Reed right after this quick music break. tune was by Bruce Rainier. And how you doing, Thom Reed?
Very good. I appreciate you having me on.
It was a pleasure, and it was a pleasure to meet you out in Phoenix. Unfortunately, you didn't get to record for our live show, but here you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a tough couple of days. My plane was grounded for 2 days. I got in, did my PowerPoint on 2 hours sleep, and had to get some rest. And by the time I was up and moving around, you were gone. So,
well, I'll tell you, no one had any idea that you had 2 hours sleep. I'll tell you that. You did a great presentation.
Oh, did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched most of it.
Oh,
and
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty big crowd.
Yeah, it was packed.
Yeah, amazing. So, and I wanted to congratulate you because I guess it happened while you and I were communicating back and forth before the Phoenix conference that your story was inducted into the Great Barrington Historical Society. And so how do you feel about that? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they actually have been talking about it for quite some time, being that our case was given I'll tell you how it led up to it. Our case was given a CE classification in September of 1969 in Great Barrington. It was actually reported by several I say several, it was like 9 people, I think, that gave testimony from South Egremont, some from the Juggin Resort. There were an awful lot in Sheffield that saw the craft. And our local bistro, Village on the Green, which, by the way, is still there today, it became like a gathering spot for people to talk about it because it was really the only restaurant, big restaurant in Sheffield. So a lot of people, the town constables, people across the street in the gas stations would come in. Everybody would talk about it. So it was never something that was like whispered. I mean, it was very well known back then. And then it went out on WSBS radio, whose letter has been hanging in Roswell for quite some time. And that's still under the same call letters as well. And South Egremont Country Club is still South Egremont Country Club. So our house is still there. And at one point, the town had a time capsule. They buried all the people's names in town. So they took, everybody's that lived there, age and everything, and they put together this time capsule, and they buried it. So you have WSBS Radio is still there under the same call letters who announced our case, or announced the craft, I should say, back in September of 1969. It was given a Heineck classification back then during the years of Project Blue Book. That doesn't mean it is Project Blue Book, but it was given a Heineck classification during those last 3 months. And then our restaurant is still there, and our house is still there. So I think with all the witnesses and the polygraph tests and the people talking about it still today, it was something that they were contemplating for quite some time. And last I knew, it really wasn't supposed to happen until Labor Day, the weekend this September, which would be the anniversary of it. But some kids, I guess, at Simon's Rock Early College, and I guess it was the Daniel Art Center, someone from Daniel Art Center was actually interested in it. So the town really got behind it, and so there was a vote. Do we wait till September or induct it? And it went through on February 6th, and I couldn't be happier. I mean, to me, it says a lot for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons, and a lot of people don't know this either, is that I was nearly killed in December of 2005. And my father actually came out to Florida to be by my side and took some time off. He was a principal at the time. He had gotten out of politics and stepped down as an attorney. And we had always talked about doing this book and writing about the things that he had gotten back from Robert Bletchman and friends and that sort of thing that were filtered to him after this United Nations thing back in 1992. He had a lot of documents back then, papers, who knows what he had. I mean, but he had an awful lot. He had a lot from Sign and, Blue Book and all the other ones, and letters from the Greece Ministry, Defense, the Pentagon, a lot of stuff that probably you don't see a lot. Whether it was really powerful documentation, I couldn't tell you. But I have a lot of it, but I don't know what I'm reading, to be honest with you. So anyway, so when he came down to Florida to see me, he brought some of the stuff with him, and had entertained the thought of, well, listen, when you get back on your feet, we really need to do this book. Because I think at one point when he said, when the time is right, Tom, we'll put this book together. And now that I almost died, maybe he thought, well, this would be either conversation or that he really meant it or what have you. So after I got back on my feet, I really pushed him to write this book with me. Hey, you came down, let's do it. I'm going to be laid up for a while. I'm running around on crutches. I've got plenty of time. What do you say? Start it, you edit it, that kind of thing. And so it was October, and he went to school. His head hit the desk. He was rushed to Yale New Haven Hospital, and he had a nasty fungus going through his blood. The mayor of Bridgeport called in the CDC. They came in from Atlanta. They shut down his building immediately, and my father died that day.
Oh, my God.
He died on the same day that our case got mentioned. Wasn't a front runner, just got some slight mention at the United Nations through our retained lawyer. We retained Robert Bletchman legally, and he mentioned our case at the UN in support of 33-426. 14 years later, after talking the book, my father dies on that same day.
Wow.
And so that, to me, is why my mother, brother, and we all have decided to step out and talk about this more, because until then, we feel that we just would have gotten lost in the shuffle. But now that we have a real heartfelt purpose for it, and with this induction into the Historical Society, as far as I'm concerned, this pays tribute to my late father. I mean, this is for him. And so for that, I'm honored and very grateful, because I think that we were able to show that this powerful individual who has a proclamation in his honor, a bench in the city green, that was a respected attorney, when he would talk about the UFO topic, some people would take that having the case now inducted, I think, really speaks loudly and adds credibility to what he was trying to do and what he was saying.
Wow. I do want to talk about that, about your father and about the rest of your family in this case, your brother and all. But we have a message board, and there is a question posted up there.
Sure.
And at the UFO Congress, this was someone that was there who I actually met. He's a listener to the show. You mentioned that 9 of your family members are Rh negative.
Mm-hmm.
In your own words, for those not familiar with Rh negative and the UFO abductions, what is the significance of this?
Well, I can tell you that's like almost a twofold question. In my opinion, I believe that man was originally Rh negative. I say that because anybody Rh positive has a link to the monkey. There's a connection to the Renaissance monkey, whereas Rh negative, there is no link to anything else. There is no beginning to, and you can't link it to anything. And it's a cleaner cell. The cleaner Rh negative is much cleaner than Rh positive because it lacks certain coppers and sugars and that sort of thing. Now, secondly, Time Life did a test on those who were Rh negative and found that the common denominator was, when testing for remote viewing, the Rh negative, those with Rh negative blood groups tend to test higher than those who had Rh positive.
Really?
Now, there's more to it. O negative blood types, which is Rh negative, O negative, was the only blood type that was really tracked by the U.S. government back in the 60s, because it was the universal donor during the years of NOM. Anybody can receive O negative blood. Anybody. But someone with Rh negative or O negative blood can only receive O negative blood, because it's in some respects, I'm not sure if the word pure is really the word for it, but there was absolutely nothing on it, on the cell itself, that your body will reject. Now, if you're Rh negative and you are having an Rh positive child, an Rh negative mother will actually, her body will go into a state where it'll attempt to abort that baby because it sees it as a foreign object.
Right.
So when you look at that, it's almost, I don't want to go too far out on a limb here, but it's almost like we're a different type of human being. When your body wants to reject another human that should be human, but the other thing too, Rh negative, my body temperature doesn't run at 98.7. My body temperature runs at 97.1. And 98.7, I got a 1.5 temperature. So yeah. I run at a different temperature. O negative have tested to be more intuitive or with regard to testing. My blood pressure runs lower. Blood temperature runs lower. You have a child, if it's Rh positive, it's looked at as a foreign substance. So maybe there's more here. But I believe that that O negative or Rh negative blood groups were the original blood of man. I believe that. I could be wrong, but that's what I believe.
Have you ever looked into any of the scientific facts about that?
No, I haven't spent a lot of time with it. I'm pretty occupied with other things, but I'm starting to look into it more and more.
Mm-hmm. We have another question up there, and that is, your brother Matt had physical trace marks on his chest.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any physical trace marks on yourself?
I just had this scoop mark thing on my right arm that so many people have alluded to the fact that that's a typical scoop mark. It's pretty big. It's larger than a pencil eraser. It's quite deep, and I've had it since I was about 6 or 7 years old, and it's almost perfectly round, and it never tans. I've never seen a scar. I just remember having it since I was a child.
Yeah, it seems like the scoop mark. I remember you talking about that. Let's see. Did Matt shave his chest for the photo, or did the aliens? And that is a goofy question, says he.
No, when he went in for to have it looked at by Dr. Mazzello, they shaved it, and it looked like his little wounds looked like sugar cones, like little, they were flanged out on top, and kind of they were actually fairly big when you really think about it. For what they were. They weren't just like a needle puncture. I mean, I think they were 3 centimeters, if I'm not mistaken. I've got the doctor's report here somewhere, but they were fairly large, and they looked like miniature sugar cones with a little bit of a flange on the outside, and it was very strange. There was talk from the doctor that if you were trying to reach the thymus gland, that would have been the spot where you would have inserted a needle. And then it was, well, why would you want to go to the thymus gland? Well, there is a sac off to the side of it, which is where your body produces the T cells for your immune system. Now, most people or doctors will attest and make you aware that by the time you're an adult, most of those cells are dried up, those T cells. But if you wanted to extract something about that, and something that would build your immune system, you could still get whatever you wanted from that sac, whether or not the T cells were still being manufactured or not. It's still there. So there was that became a topic for a while. Mm-hmm. But, who knows? But it wasn't a peculiar spot in the direct location would have been that sac that produces the T cells.
I think I'm being a little bit rude to the listener that may not know about your case. So if you would, kind of in a nutshell, can we talk about your early childhood, how this whole thing started and where it progressed and progressing?
Yeah, sure. We had an 80-acre horse farm in Sheffield, Massachusetts, which was pretty rural. It was out in the tri-state area, kind of nestled, if you will, between New York, Connecticut, and that little corner of Massachusetts, not far from where Norman Rockwell's brush first touched a canvas.
The Berkshire area.
Yeah, Music Inn, Tanglewood, that kind of thing. And we, like I said, we had a large spread of land, and our house was pretty much on the top part of it. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, and I mentioned it at the Congress, that Sheffield is one of the highest locations for a 1,700-mile stretch of road. Huh. It's almost 3,000 feet high. Beckett's 3,000 feet high. And our house basically sat, if you look at the pictures, pretty much up on top of that. And so it's been speculated that because we had the highest, or one of the highest elevations, that, there could have been some testing and that sort of thing up there. When you look at, Pratt & Whitney was only 55 miles away. Command Aerospace was 40 miles away. This is by road. GE was only 19 miles away. You had the Groton Naval Base making nuclear submarines that weren't far away. And so you had a lot of military around this mountain. That's not even talking about Albany and everything. That's just Massachusetts and Connecticut. And so here we are with the highest elevation with a house on top of it. And on top of that hill, if you went down, there were valleys. And so, maybe that is part of, maybe that took or played a role in what happened with us. It's really hard to say, but we had seen a craft in 1966, and it was on our property, the backside of the property, not too far from the house, maybe 400 yards from the house, and maybe a little more than that, just past a tree line. In 67, we saw it a second time, and that was when my mother got involved with. Alien Mysteries did a pretty good job on that one. My mother comes running out and grabbed us out of the road, and we were pale. We weren't really speaking to each other. We were really kind of out of it. And I remember staring at my brother, and I remember my mother coming out and grabbing him. But as far as my demeanor, I guess if you were looking in from the outside, I looked to be just placid and out of it and very unresponsive. Yet I remember things pretty clearly, just as my brother did. He wasn't really responding, but we, for some reason, seemed to be in this state where our bodies seemed to be manipulated or just like this dead, look to ourselves and not really moving. Yet our insides, our brain and our eyes and thoughts were moving. We were thinking. We were able to respond in a way, but our bodies wouldn't. It was almost like we were confined to a shell or a mannequin, but we were alive in it. It was really weird. And so my mother grabbed my son, my younger brother Matthew, grabbed me, and so she grabbed her sons, ran us into the house, sat us at the dining room table, and gave us aspirin and orange juice, and we slept in the living room next to a fireplace. We slept on the sofas. Mother stayed with us that night, and what we remember from that night was, we remember, seeing this craft that really looked more like a tarnished or dirty turtle shell, and it was laying on the ground. Didn't see any gear, didn't see any windows. But it was huge. It was about 15 to 18 feet high, and it was probably 40 to 60 feet around, and it had a lip around it, almost like a tire lip, not made of rubber, but it had a lip around it that you would reference as, almost like if you ever had a 10-speed bike, you had those thin rubber lips for the tires, almost something like that, a big lip like that wrapped around the front of it in the back, and circled it. And it wasn't at the bottom part. The bottom part kind of taped it back in, but there was this big round lip that went around it. And it almost looked like it had sections to it or lines in it. I'm not going to say it was panels, but there was some lines through it. And it wasn't silver. It was more like a bronze with maybe like like a pewter, maybe kind of a weathered,
a little bit of a silvery or
like a burned pewter, like a bronzy pewter that blended into. It wasn't an even color, and I asked myself, was it the light? Was it the sunlight? Was it reflecting differently? But it did not resonate the same color. It seemed to have different tints in it. I guess if you took a blowtorch to it, sometimes you got that orangey bronze look, and then here it's a little lighter. That's the way it looked. It looked very weathered to me. And it was big. And we remember the inside of it. I remember a inside that was probably about the size of a master bedroom, a hall, like a squared off area. I was escorted out this room. I was going right out the front. I took a right down this hallway that wrapped around like a question mark. I had passed my brother, who was standing there very placid again, yet he remembers seeing me clearly, but to me, he looked like he was almost asleep standing up. And I was taken around him, and he had a figure next to him, too. Every time we had somebody next to us or that was with us during this time, they were always on our left side. And it was almost like we got escorted, and there were zones. So I was taken up this windy area that wrapped to the right and came back around, and when I got to the front of it, this individual that was with me left, and this new person or entity or what have you was now responsible for me. That's the way it appeared. And then I was taken into this darker room where I saw what was very dark and a screen that had come up that went wrapped from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and this was just a beautiful shot of a lake and a willow tree, and it was moving, and it was beautiful and chanting, and it was just totally took my mind off my brother, and it just, I'll never forget it. I mean, the willow tree was moving, and wind was coming.
Whoops. Hello?
Yeah, I thought you were recording. I wasn't going to say anything.
That's okay. I am recording. And Tom, are you there?
Yeah, what happened?
We're back. We're actually going to go live. So just hold that thought. And I'm recording all this, so the podcast is going to hear all this, what we're going through. So, Keith, anytime you want to fire us into the live, we're ready to go.
Should I keep talking?
Yeah, sure. Is that okay, Keith?
Yeah, hold on here.
Power's back?
Yeah. So if you want to just hold that thought for a minute, we'll just, once we know power is on, I'm just going to say something to the live listener real quickly.
Okay.
Okay, you can go live anytime.
All right, let's go now. All right, so if you're listening live, we're just right back, or where the power was out at the Dark Matter Radio Network. So the power's back on, and we were right in the middle of a conversation, Tom. Do you remember where you left off?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to back up a little bit just in case, because we went down for a few minutes. Anyway, I was talking about inside what this craft was that was near our property that was in 1967, and it's it's the second to the second of 3 that were seen in our property that made so much local noise. And like I said, I remember this hallway that wrapped almost like a question mark, and it really did. It kind of, where the circle would be at the bottom of the question mark was really a square room, or a squared off room. And not perfectly square, but softly rounded square area. And I was taken out that into what would be the bottom of the question mark. And when I wrapped to the right and wrapped around in it, to me, it really did resemble a question mark. And I passed my brother and got to the front of this area, and I was released, for lack of a better word, and at that point handed off to someone else, which I believe was now responsible for me, and shown this room that was much darker. It had a couple of tables in it. There was a screen, like I said, lit up with a big image of a tree, a willow tree off to the left, and a big bay of water. And to give you an idea, well, we had a black and white television back then. This is 1967. This visual would be like taking maybe 20 60-inch plasma TVs and stacking them all on top of each other and having it be one screen. That vivid, that big, that crisp. It was just absolutely amazing. And I was just staring at this thing. I didn't know if I was looking out some strange window, if I was looking. I had no idea what to make of it. But it was night out, And this thing was just like I was looking over a beautiful lake. It was this moving willow tree in sunlight. And my brother was with me, and it kind of took my mind off that, obviously. And then and there wasn't much more than that. There were a couple individuals working on some lower tables that were bronze or brown. They were not silver or chrome. And some markings on top, and if I remember correctly. And then to the left of me looked like it had, I'd say, almost like a second tier or some type of a second story area there. It looked like glass of some sort off to the left, almost like brick glass, those square glass pieces. And and then I was brought back to the driveway where my mother came running out of the house and scooped us up and brought us into the house and cared for us with blankets and everything else. And
now, was there missing time according to what you thought, or? And another thing, how old were you when this happened?
7.
So, what did you make of it? I mean, how could you possibly wrap your brain around what you just experienced? Are you okay?
Yeah, I just I got a little bit of a sore throat, so
yeah. Don't die on me, because we don't want anyone dying on this show.
I've been killed long ago.
We don't want anyone dying on a live show. Yeah. So
can't edit that out.
So you're 7 years old. You have this beyond amazing thing happen. So your mother scooped you up in the driveway. Did she call the police, or what happened at that point?
Well, when we were gone, she had actually saddled up her horses and ran all over the property for us, turned on the floodlights. My grandmother came out onto the screen porch. We didn't have neighbors. And this was a dirt road out of the middle of nowhere. And like I said, we had 80 acres, just to give you an idea. And our closest neighbor, was probably a quarter of a mile. So she found us. I mean, she was on her horse, and she was up towards the top of the property. We had hay baler, and we weren't allowed to go past the hay baler thing. So, she had seen the flashes of light. She had known something was going on, and she wasn't kind of a novice to it. She knew something was happening. And so she just went up high on the hill and decided to look down, which would make sense. And then she saw us all of a sudden staring at my brother and I staring at each other. He was lower than me in the lower part of the driveway, and I was on a little bit of a hill up near the stable. And my grandmother was on the screen porch, and then all of a sudden she yells, and my mother hears her, and then runs down on the horse and jumps off and scoops up my little brother and scoops up me, rushes us in the house, like I said, sits us at the table, gives us a baby aspirin juice, and we sleep in the living room. Now, did she call anybody? No, not that night. I don't think she did. She might have called a friend or two, but nothing to report. But when we went back to school and she opened up the restaurant, and more times than not, I actually rode with my mother to the Village on the Green restaurant, and I would open it with her. And we would, have breakfast, and all the other kids in town, and that were, our restaurant was walking distance from the school. So if your parents were driving to work, they'd drop the kids off at the restaurant. My mother would make them breakfast. At the end of the week, they'd square the bill away, and all the kids would run across the street to the school. So, and when I say go across the street to the school, I mean it was like walking basically just across a 4-lane road, and you were at the school. So, and they had a crossing guard. So after school, everyone hung out there too. So it became the hub, and a lot of people were talking. But at this point, not the whole town had seen anything. So it was more like a private conversation with those who came in. Hey, Nancy, what's going on? Because they could tell something was wrong. And so that went on for quite a while. I mean, I'd say for almost a year, it became something that was like whispered, on the lips of my mother and us at the school, and the restaurant. And it wasn't until 1969, which really changed everything. That was the account that went out on WSBS radio, Whose Letters in Roswell, at September of 1969. And that was witnessed by those from Drug and Resort and a lot of people in the area. and they saw the craft performing acrobatical movements unknown to conventional aircraft and hovering about 500 feet over our farm. Now, it didn't used to be the Reed farm. It used to be the Burroughs farm because my mother got married afterwards, so it was the Burroughs farm. But it was our farm. And because of the high-net classification and WSBS radio being there and our restaurant still being there and the Historical Society getting a lot of calls about this because it's still talked about today, is how it got inducted into the Historical Society. But as far as what we saw that night, I was leaving Butternut Basin Ski Resort. I was riding at a 4-H show, and my saddle had come loose, and so we left early, and so I didn't do so well. I got a brown ribbon, and they took me to the Meadows restaurant to eat, and then after that, we had my mother decided to go down to Village on the Green to make the night deposit drop because our cook had been locking up because it was Labor Day weekend. My grandmother, who normally would have run it, was with us while I was in competition. So she went to make the night deposit drop, made sure the chairs were all up, place was locked up, went to the bank, made the deposit, and now we're heading back towards Great Barrington. And a shortcut to get to the home would have been over the Sheffield Bridge, and so that's what she did. My mother took a shortcut over the Sheffield Bridge, which is basically very swampy, willow tree type of scenario, very marshy, and a lot of open land. And my grandmother turned around as I was sitting in the back seat, and I was going to give my brother a fireball. And she had turned basically to tell me that he could choke on it. He was too young, because I was only 9. I'm 9, and he was like 7. And she just didn't think it was a good idea. And sure enough, she sees the lights out the back side of the car on the left side, kind of off where I was sitting in the back seat. And then my mother says that the car had come off the right side of the road in a stall. She really doesn't know if she panicked and flooded it, or I don't know. All she knows is that it came off to the right. You could hear the stones tapping underneath the gas tank and the fender walls, and it was like driving over eggshells. It was that kind of a calm, that kind of a dead, and it just went completely silent. It was almost like it was surreal. And then we had this tingling feeling, and which later on we've associated with ELF, but it was just a very strange feeling. Your body picked up on it. It was not something that you were accustomed to. And then bang, there was an eruption of crickets and katydids, and everything just changed. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. You could feel the barometric change in pressure, and boom, we're no longer in the car. And we were separated, and wherever this was, I was in what looked like almost like an airplane hangar. It's the only way I can describe it. It was that kind of big and open, and there were carts next to me. There were 2 silver carts. I don't know if they had wheels or not, but there were 2 chrome-looking carts that were maybe 4 feet high. And aside from that, I believe it was empty. And then there was a light that I began to see ahead of me. And I don't know if the door opened left or it opened right or however it did, but a light came in. And there was a person, or what resembled a frail person, standing there. And for the first time, I was actually very scared. I was very nervous. This wasn't something there where I was engulfed or engaged and having my mind manipulated through ELF or stimulating neurons in my head or whatever was happening. I didn't have this calm about me. And I walked, believe it or not. I don't know why, but I walked towards this person, and I was grabbed really hard on my left arm. I mean hard, like it hurt, and taken out this hallway off to the right. And I went down another hallway, which teed off to the left. These were not windy halls, not this part of it. These were very left and right. And I would say maybe this first hallway that I went down, maybe 20 feet, and then I took a left, and maybe another 20 feet, and I was taken into a room to the right. Now, this room that I was taken into was very odd, very weird, shaped very strangely. It had the center of it bowed in like it would if you had a coffee can. and there was a pocket to the left between where this bowed-out area would come back to the wall and then the normal wall. There was a pocket there of maybe like an 8 or 10-foot span in between where that rounded area connected and the wall connected to that back wall. And it was the same on the other side. There was something, an apparatus in the ceiling, and there was a table towards pretty much underneath it. And aside from that, there wasn't much in there that I remember. I sat there for a bit, very aware of what was happening, very sharp at this point, very nervous, very scared. And there was what looked like a large ant. It's the best way to describe it. And it had turned, moved, got my attention. I was very frightened by that, and I took off to the right side of this bowed-in Camden area on the opposite side of where they were. I had run into a hallway. Now, this hallway was absolutely massive. When I say big, it was the center that I came in was like a big circle, which is why the room that I ran out of had an inward bow. And so I would assume any room off that rounded area would have a bowed-in area in it. Now, was like set up like a Y. Off to the right, there was right to my right shoulder at this point, out in this hallway. You're looking at a tube or a walkway of some maybe distance of 4 cars, car length, like a 4-lane highway. And then just opposite that, on the other part of the top of the Y, if you will, was set up very much the same. Now, the bottom Y part was probably twice that. So to me, it looked like traffic coming in from the top of these Ys would filter down to the larger tube. And the rounded out area was meant to accommodate traffic. That's what I get from that. So wherever this was going, who knows if it was a good spot or a bad spot, but that's the way it looked to me. And I was there for several seconds, and then I was brought back in. I sat on this table, and this apparatus came over me that looked like the top of maybe a tanning bed or an MRI machine. It had holes in the side of it. It was made by 2 different parts. It looked like the 2 parts separated. And I laid down. It covered me to some degree. I could still see under it. It was not tight on me. And there were oval holes on it. Oval holes all the way through this apparatus. And it stopped just before my chin. And there were what looked like raisin packets, large raisin packets with adhesive on it. And these were actually placed on my body, on my leg, my stomach, and on my face.
Were you fully clothed at the time, or not?
No. It's pretty embarrassing, but no.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I do have some questions here for you. So, it sounds to me this experience, you had a total recall. Like a lot of times you hear about, regression and, hypnotherapy to get the story. Did you have total recall of this whole situation all along?
Well, yeah. I wouldn't say I have total recall. I'm willing to bet I remember about 20% of it. I mean, I don't remember a lot. I remember segments, fragmented moments. Now,
details are amazing.
Did I have? Well, this is what I say to myself. First of all, there were 4 of us on that craft. If that's what we were. We all have talked about this our whole lives. We all go back and forth. Mm-hmm. We were not really made or to forget it. I think because we were so young, and this has been something that's been told to us by others in the field, that we were young kids. And if there was something that they wanted to extract or something that they wanted to exchange or mutually exchange, you don't want to drug somebody up and then extract something from them, because you're extracting what you're using to pollute or alter the body before you extract it. So being that we were O negative, and being that my son is so advanced today, which is proven by school records and everything else, it's not me telling you that, we think something was evenly exchanged. Now, if there was something in these packets that were absorbed in our skin, and there was something that was extracted from us at the same time, you wouldn't want to be drugged up. That would have happened first, and then they would have put the packets on you for your body to absorb something, and then at the end of the day, it puts you out. One of the packets puts you out. One of the packets is something else, what have you, and then your little moment of testing or whatever is completed, and you're brought back into this room which I was standing in, and then we're back in the car. Now, my mother was completely unconscious. My brother was out like a light. My grandmother was the one who first was awake, wide awake, and I found her walking in the middle of the road. Now, she had turned the car around and shot right back into town where our store was, where they made the night drop, because one of the stores was open, the Silk's restaurant. Well, convenience store and so on. They sold candy and ice cream. And so when she went back there to get them, that's when we realized how much time had passed, because they were getting ready to close. And so she speaks to the owner of the restaurant, the convenience store, and she gets wrapped up in bikes and strollers and these other things in there, and she's trying to find her way out, and she's not really thinking clearly. I walk in after her, and I'm trying to, Nana, trying to get her attention because everyone else in the car is out. And she finally takes my hand, and I walk out of the store with her, and she starts breaking down a little bit, starts to shake and cry a little bit. It was a bad day for her. And she comes over to the car. My mother now is up, and she gets into the driver's seat. My grandmother gets back in the passenger seat. For some reason, they were reversed. My grandmother was in the driver's seat. My mom had been driving earlier, so they were reversed. And my brother starts to come to. And like I say, come to, that's what it was like. It was like we were put out. It was like we were under anesthesia of some type, which is why my father said, he thinks that what happened in 1969 was a little closer to home than we realized, that there was a joint effort there, because this was a big place that we were in. Certainly wouldn't fit in scale with what we saw as the craft, and the 2 years earlier. So we don't really know where we were, to be honest with you. I was still trying to figure that one out. But it was a big facility. And we drove home, not a word. My mother switches our rooms. She changed the rooms, gives us the front room, the master bedroom actually, closes off the back room, puts the house up for sale, and we're out of there. And we moved to Great Barrington. And then after my father marries my mother and graduates law school, he gets an offer in the Canaan area and accepts it. And he's a lawyer, and now he's in office for 2 terms. He's backed by Senator Chris Dodd. He's making all kinds of political, friends, and I've had coffee at Governor Weiker's house, or the governor's mansion, I should say. And then my father starts running into Robert Bletchman, who used to work with J. Allen Hynek. And after a couple of drinks, we start talking. I start meeting him on Fridays at his office. He takes an interest in our case. He finds the Hynek classification that it was given in 1969. He tells us he's got something big coming up, which happens to be the United Nations Symposium, in a couple of years. This is probably 89, 90, 18 months down the road, I'd really like to discuss your case. Is your father still in politics? Yes, he is. I don't think he'd appreciate that. And so my father and him being friends, and the fact that we decided if we legally retained him, we would have some control over it. And so I did. I gave him Robert a check for $1,500, and he mentioned our case at the United Nations in support of 33-426, and he did so very tactfully. And it was really only piece of this that he really found of interest, and because he was still talking about the Cash Landerman and the Hudson River Valley case, that the feeling that we had about the environment, how it would just seem to change, and how the barometric pressure seemed to change, and how life would go kind of still and quiet and become like a dead calm, and then your body would pick up on this field or energy and this lighterness and almost a gravity, and it was very, very strange. It was a vibe doesn't really do it justice. If you took 3 moons, like you got a full moon out, you have more, full moon, you want to go out and party, stay out later, have that extra drink, and it'll be okay. If you had 3 full moons, you have an energy about you. It's not anxiety. There's just something that, like your body is made of water, so you almost feel different, almost enlightened. And that is kind of like what it was. There's no way you're going to sleep. And then, bang, it changes, and you're like placid, and boom, there's a eruption of crickets. That's what it was like.
Wow. We only have a couple minutes, and what I'm going to do, if it's all right with you, Thom, is I'm not sure how this live stream is going to work. And so I'd like to hold you on in case it doesn't work. I know it's kind of a second fiddle thing. I hope you don't take it that way. But but anyway, is that all right with you?
What do you want me to just hang on?
Yeah, but we're not ready to go just yet because if this is the end, I want you to answer one of the chat room questions. And
sure.
What did the beings look like?
Well, there were 2. There were what looked very human to me. They had what almost looked like skin tight white clothing, off-white clothing, and I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but they looked almost like smaller Asian people with descent with eyeglasses, large type of eye lenses, no hair, and they had a weak chin, but everything else looked pretty human to me.
Wow.
But then there were, not the grays people talk about. I didn't see that. But the insect thing that I've actually drawn at, it's on my website.
Yeah, I saw that.
That looked like an ant, a big ant standing on its back feet. It had a long grayish, mushroom-shaped or colored skin tone to it from the neck down. It had limbs that kind of stemmed, the arms, if it was the arms, and the legs kind of stemmed from the same lower part of the body. They're very stick-like, and in my sketch, the lines in it are more like a gray, but they were more like a wine color, like a red wine color rings on it. And the head was more like a bronze gold, and it seemed very smooth. It didn't seem like the eye popped out of it. It almost looked like it was a smooth, sphered head, but the size of a football.
Wow.
And, of course, Alien Mysteries gave it, buck teeth and everything, but I didn't see any of that. It just looked like a goldish football. Yeah, it did. It was stupid. But like, it wasn't odd enough. Like a football-shaped head that was smooth. Eyes were all just like an ant. You could probably, or like that of a snake's eyes. How they're like open all the time, but they just look like they blend right in, like that. And it was about 4 feet tall, had a little bit of a teardrop body, and it had like human hands. So people have said to me, "Well, that sounds pretty odd." Well, but then we're splicing monkeys with jellyfish now, and we have spiders that we're grabbing the DNA from that and incorporating it into a cow to make spider silk, which is like a powerful type of material now that the government's using for bulletproof vests. And we're playing with species here, so it occurs to me now I can talk about it better because it doesn't sound so far-fetched anymore that what we saw looked like a big spider. But then again, if I said to you, how big is the average bird, you'd probably tell me a couple of feet wide. But then again, if you go back to prehistoric days, they had 38-foot wingspan. So just because something's an inch tall here doesn't mean it's an inch tall somewhere else. I mean, we have midgets that are 3.5 feet, and we've got basketball players that are 7.
Right.
So it basically looked like I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it looked like someone took some human DNA and made an intelligent spider that could perform tasks that would be almost impossible for a human to do, because we're not very strong.
Right, not compared to an ant. Yeah.
Now they can jump 20 feet. The spiders are all over.
Hey, Thom, we didn't get to talk about much, and so if you want to hang on for just a minute, because I'd like to have you back, but let's just see if this other show is working. So just hang on just for a second.
Absolutely.
And I'm not hearing a thing. Let me just refresh here.
Am I on or off?
You're still on. We're still live, and so, but I'm just not sure how his
Blog Talk Radio.
I think that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, if you guys
here we go. So, hang on just a second.
You hear me? Let me know I'm live.
So, Thom, I want to thank you so much. The other show is going live, and we're going to tap into that. Thanks so much. We'll have you back on.
Yeah, please do. Thanks again, everybody.
All right. You take care, and I'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Good night, buddy. Good night.
Please give us a shout if you can hear us on the live chat.
Okay. So, Randy...
Oh, we're on. Okay, great. Hang on. Here we go.
So just
Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Wisnowski.
Just to let the live listener know, I cannot communicate with Randy. He is he's on the show alone, so we're just going to be listening in. But you can go to that chat room. That's on our website. You can see the link there and join in the chat to ask Randy questions. Here he goes.
Joining us for this live chat event with Ariel Phenomenon director Randal Nickerson. Before I hand it back over to Randal, I just want to go over a few housekeeping things real quick. There's no phone-in function for this event. You'll get to listen to Randal talk about the history of the event and the progress on the film. We'll talk for about 15 minutes, and then we'll take some questions from the chat room below the media player. I'll be in the chat room interacting with you while Randal is talking, so feel free to start typing in your questions now. After he's done talking, we'll have about 10 or so minutes to answer some of your questions, and then we'll take just a few more minutes to talk a little more about the film one more time before we wrap things up. I apologize now that we probably won't be able to take everyone's question because of the time, but we'll do what we can to answer as many as possible. I'll be randomly selecting questions while Randal is speaking so he can start answering them as soon as he's done. After tonight's event is finished, the recorded broadcast will be available here on the film's website for anyone who wasn't able to listen in live. I'll post the link to this page on the film's Facebook and Twitter pages. The chat room will be closed after tonight. If for any reason our call disconnects, we'll dial back in as quick as we can. If something like that happens, I'll let you know in the chat room. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Randal, and I'll see you in the chat room.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ann. I just want to say Ann is really whom has brought you the website, and she's really done a fantastic job. My name is Randal Nickerson. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen in on tonight's event, and very much appreciate your support and interest in this film, and all the donations that have been made thus far. It is really helpful, and I really appreciate it. This is an important film, and I don't think you will be disappointed when you see it. It's always been an amazing story, whether you believe in aliens or not. It's an incredible story. This is also being broadcast live on Podcast UFO with Martin Willits. Martin's a good friend of mine and does a wonderful job in these issues. This film has been a label, for a love for many years, and it is nearing completion. And there are a lot of people who have been waiting for it to come out. People that were at the incident and in the surrounding area, and people all over the world, really. It covers an event that affected a lot of people's lives and still lives on today. I knew Harvard professor Dr. John Mack well, and several years after he passed, I was approached by Dominique Kalamanopoulos of the John Mack Institute to make a DVD of his interviews in Zimbabwe regarding the Ariel School event. And as I began seeing the scope of the event, the discovery of several other archival interviews from '94 of witnesses, players involved, including the BBC, Reuters, Harvard, and after having found several other witnesses from the local community outside of Ariel, it became clear to me that this was a much larger story and would require considerably more time and effort in a future documentary film. The story, for those who don't know, took place at a rural primary school in Zimbabwe in 1994, where at least 60 school children reported seeing a craft and at least one strange being on their playground during their morning break time. Thousands of other Zimbabweans also reported seeing something unusual during that same time period, before and after Ariel. And this film has been an effort to help to find all those people and the witnesses involved and document the event as it happened and the effects that still carry on now 20 years later. So a little history on the project. The first thing I received was the many hours of video interviews that Dr. John Mack conducted in '94 at the school. I began transferring all the beta SP tapes to digital format, and as I looked at the footage and the interviews, I became interested in whether or not that there was more to the story. With the John E. Mack Institute, which was set up after Dr. Mack's death, we initially raised $17,500 to a fundraiser, which allowed me to transfer footage, research, and travel to Africa to locate the school and anyone else who was involved at the time. Once in Africa, I began to find many of the people involved with the help of a reporter who initially covered the story. One interesting thing I discovered was that all the reporters who covered this story, the event, were adamant that what happened at Ariel was real. I found that fascinating. And every reporter that covered the story also had kept all their notes and video from this event. Of all the stories they covered, this one held great importance to them. I recovered all the archival footage of the interviews and other media that other media had shot, as well as find the names of the people that were witness to the event, also teachers and parents. And this event has been on so many people's minds for such a long time, it was never forgotten. Now, I always wondered why it had never really been told in its entirety, and I'm sure the reason is because of the expense and time it would take to find, travel, and interview everybody. The explosion of social media made people a little easier. I don't really think it would be feasible to do that without social media. I began interviewing witnesses today in Africa, England, across the U.S. and Canada. For those that don't know, due to the state of affairs in Zimbabwe at the end of the 90s, the majority of the witnesses left the country and are now scattered all across the globe. And that has made it a more difficult task, for sure, to find everybody. As an example, it took me 2 years alone to find the BBC reporter who was first on scene back in 1994. And I was able to get an interview with him before he passed away. And it's his only interview he's ever done on his coverage of this event. He was a war reporter in Africa. And I spent some time with him, and, you know, he said many times over that this was the most amazing story he had ever covered. When in Africa and England, I received a lot of help. I can't tell you enough how much help I get from so many great-hearted people who knew I was on a budget, offered me places to stay, and helped in all kinds of ways that really made it possible to get to this point. When I got back to the States with hundreds of hours of footage, it was kind of been a little daunting. I was working alone on this project for a long time and wearing many hats, I should say, too many hats, trying so very hard to get all the facts down, documented, and to really understand how everything occurred, the sequence of events and the aftermath, which will all be in the film. One of the good things about spending so much time on a project is that the more people come forward over time, and that is exactly what happened. It has just been difficult to travel, meet, and interview all of them. I mean, it'd be great, you know, with a much higher budget to really just to interview everyone. It just hasn't been feasible, and I'd really like to do that. Funding has been an issue for sure, and I've had to stick to it and do the best I could with limited resources. You know, they say that completing a project like this, it takes three things: time, effort, and money. And the time and effort has definitely been there, but the lack of funds has slowed me down a bit. I reached a point recently where I just could not take everything on alone, and I think that's a good thing. and started to put together a team to bring the film to its completion, which is why I have to raise funds. Also because several more witnesses have come forward that are key to the story and need to be interviewed. And that requires travel.
Blog Talk Radio.
Real event. So the bigger picture, I mean, you have a lot of thoughts when you're making a film on something like this. And, you know, some of my questions that I had for myself was the story made up? You know, it was not what I saw in the initial interviews. And I think anybody that sees interviews is like, what? There's something to this. You know, I saw a lot of describing what they saw with an honesty that is difficult to create, especially for kids of that age range. But you have to look, and what I found was through several interviews, not just Dr. Mack's interview, by different news organizations over time, was that their stories didn't change. There was a consistency to the reports that spoke to the credibility that something was witnessed by these children. I've shown the interviews to teachers and psychiatrists for their take on whether they believed what they were reporting was real, and they were impressed and said that, you know, they're honestly describing something that they witnessed. And there were other witnesses that also convinced me that there was something more to this in the days before and after that were adults, pilots, air traffic controllers, etc. And I was looking for verification from another source that validated the Ariel event even further, and that's what I discovered. And there are so many others that who I have not had the resources to go and interview, but they're out there. My question initially was for the witnesses today was, what would they think today? I mean, I thought finding them would help illuminate the truth of the event. Was what they saw real? What effect did it have on them? How did the families react? How did their teachers react? Press react, etc. I mean, what did it mean to them? All the emotions that come up with what was an impactful event that so many people said was otherworldly. As I began to find the individual witnesses, I found that some saw different things at different times, as this was a large playground and different age kids were in different areas. Some were playing soccer or football on the playing field and witnessed some strange moving lights in the sky before the children began to gather in an area where these beings were seen. Some were in a classroom finishing up assignments. Some were on the playground. It was not like everyone saw the same thing at the same time, which actually also added a validity to it. I think Colin Mackey, who was the headmaster at the time at the school, said it best. He said, I'm convinced that they saw something. What it was, I can't answer. I think he handled the whole event in a way that is admirable. He wasn't closed-minded, and he wasn't too open-minded, if you know what I mean. So I just want to go down this road a little bit. You know, these events happen all over the world in hundreds of years, if not more. I interviewed some African tribal leaders while I was there about this very thing. And some of the interesting things they said, which will be in much more detail, is we used to think they were gods, but now realize these visitors they have had for hundreds of years are creatures from another planet that appear to have the capability of God. You know, many questions come to mind when you're covering a topic. What does it say about us as a species, as humans? Are these events real in a factual sense, or is there something else being said through these events? What comes from the actual contact with something unknown, and what comes from the human psyche after the fact to make sense of what was seen or experienced? Things also to explore in the film as well. If nothing else, the question of other life in the universe seems to be prevalent in the human consciousness and not going away anytime soon. We're discovering planets not so far away from us that have the ingredients for supporting life as we know it. And that is key, as we know it. So we only have one example thus far, and that's planet Earth. And we live in this vast, vast place, and we have not even ventured past our own front door. We've been looking outside the windows. What we have today is, like, as far as capability and technology, would appear almost impossible or magical to our ancestors of even less than 100 years ago. I don't know. I think about it, I don't think we can say with certainty at all what an alien intervention would look like. Maybe the reports from around the world are what it would look like. It may very well be difficult to comprehend, difficult to document or prove in our understanding of reality at this point. If another civilization has progressed outside their solar system or has 1 million years of space travel under their belt, their capability, understanding, intelligence in how they interact with a far less advanced species may seem like magic to us or be so subtle that we can't even recognize it for what it is. It may involve many things we haven't even discovered yet or hypothesized about. There are many thoughts one goes through when considering the possibilities of the unknown. And not to be afraid of it or get paranoid, but to look with an open, skeptical mind at this mysterious universe in which we live. Just some thoughts that go across one's mind. In investigating the Ariel School incident, I met hundreds of people from all over the world who have had encounters. And there is a consistency that is amazing. No big story, as so many investigators have found the same thing. I guess the question is on my mind that, I've had a lot of people approach me and discuss it with me is why can't we discuss it more openly? There's so many people that keep it quiet. I've had several people, I was the only person they've ever told about it. It's very moving, I have to say. It is, as many people have said, the biggest day in human history. And that day, whenever it comes, will be the biggest day if it has not already happened. And I agree with that. And I guess what you see, and I've seen in the past, is like in Copernicus times, the resistance to something so new and changing can be ferocious. But we should really look carefully at these events, very carefully, and not dismiss them so easily, and find out what we can learn. I think it's important. So, in spending years meeting all these people who are witnesses and connected to this event somehow, I just got to say they're really good people, normal people who have a lot of questions of what happened that day. And I hope to answer a lot of their questions. And there's great support from everybody involved who wants to see this story told. I really appreciate that. It really helps. You realize that, you're not doing something. You're doing something that even the people involved want to see. And that's really important. So I've been funding this film myself for years after the initial fundraising with the John Mack Institute to get it off the ground, which is much appreciated. And I reached the point where I cannot afford the next steps, and I've had to bring people on board, which is wonderful. It's really wonderful. It's who would see what an amazing story this is. And Christopher, Ann, Eric, and Leslie and just have been an amazing help. And have also had a lot of support from all the people who have donated so far, and friends and family. It's been wonderful. As you know, we're currently doing a fundraiser on our website to raise additional resources to keep the project going. Our goal is to complete the final interviews and to pay the editors, which is $80,000 total for that, and we're less than 20% there, but hey, 20% is really good. And we are also looking for an executive producer who will share this incredible story with the world, and we really need your help. Our Facebook page has exploded from 0 to 2,600 people in over a month and 15,000 hits on our website in a little over 3 weeks. There's a lot of interest in this story. If everyone who is on our Facebook page donated $15, we would be well on our way. Check out the fundraising pages. Look at the gifts available. We really appreciate any help that you can give us. It's a big thanks to all those who have donated and to continue to support this film. We really appreciate it. So that's a little bit of the talk right now, and I'm going to start answering some questions. Okay, I'm going to get some questions here. How many did you track down? Well, this is an email question. About 40 of the children, and then most of the teachers, all of the reporters, and about 50 other witnesses, maybe about 60 of the witnesses. Okay. How did this experience affect or impact the lives of the witnesses? Profoundly. I don't think I've run into any of the witnesses who don't remember that day or don't think about it very often, if not every single day. So there's, I think, a profound impact. I think I find that the children that were closer to this being, or the two beings that were reported, I think they had the most profound impact. That's just been my take. Did any of the kids' parents or teachers refuse to be interviewed? Not for the most part. I only had one person that didn't want to be interviewed, and I'd set up the interview and was traveling there, and I think his reason for not interviewing was fascinating to me. Actually, he didn't say it didn't happen or anything else. He was a very religious person and thought that whatever happened there was somehow connected to the devil. And that's something you run into in Zimbabwe and different parts of the world. People with very strong religious beliefs, and that was true in Zimbabwe for sure. Here's another question. Have any skeptics attempted to debunk this incident? What have the explanations been? Well, I've looked at some of the debunking people that are skeptical about it, but the data presented. And when you research something for years, you learn about the whole sequence of events and who is involved and this and that. And I haven't found a good. I haven't felt like the skeptic side has really presented a good argument with the facts that are available, which there are many, and I'll present that in the film. I think I want to cover that in the film as well. It will be. There's another question. What has made the strongest impact on you in making this documentary? The people. I think the people involved and how it's impacted their lives. Also, the other people that have nothing to do with this story who have come forward to me and told me their encounters, things that have happened to them. That has really profoundly impacted me, because a lot of times, as I said earlier, they were telling me something that they hadn't told anybody, and that affected me a lot, and brings up the question of why does this have to be so secretive? Why can't we all talk about this stuff? Just be a little more open-minded about looking at things like this. Why not? We live in a big universe. We're making all these discoveries every day. We're still discovering species on our planet, and we still haven't explored our oceans really fully. And, personally, I just think, I don't know if we can say there's nothing out there, or, make judgments on whether or not something more advanced than us can actually get here or not. How do we know that? I don't know, a lot of questions. But, yeah, I've been very impacted strongly by doing that stuff. Makes you think a lot about a lot of things. How many children have been able to track down? I've got that. Oh, I have a thank you for doing this. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It means a lot when I hear that. because it's been a lot of work. I really appreciate the good words from people. Did any of the other children have intuitions of ecological devastation? Yes, I think there's still a lot of people that I have not been able to interview that have more information on that part of the message, which I think is just, when you think about that, children that are that young talking about something that's very adult, something pretty magical about that in itself. Okay, let me move on to another one. What are their similarities and differences with the Westfall incident? That was in Australia. I believe it was 1966. I believe this was an incident that happened in Australia. And I believe the difference is that this was an incident where a craft was seen, an unusual craft or pair of crafts that were hovering very low to the ground. I don't think that there were any beings seen. I think that's the only difference. And there was another case in Broadhaven, Wales, back in 1977, I believe, 78, where a playground, children, and a lot of adult witnesses around the area. That was quite a big incident. I actually went there because it was similar to Ariel. There was a craft scene, and a few of the kids had seen a being. So I went there and met with some of the people that were now in their 40s, and I asked them if they still believe what happened. I talked to them about what they saw, and they, didn't want to be interviewed at this point. But I did interview some of the teachers at Broadhaven. But it was interesting that many years later that everybody was still said that what they said when they were young was real. I had to take some time to really look at other incidents, and there's a lot of things you have to consider when looking at anything like this. What's going on in space? What's going on with the space program? What's going on with meteorite activity? All these things have to be considered and are going to be presented in the show. Okay. Interesting. Have any of the children that have been re-interviewed recently claimed to have been abducted? I've talked to several that have had further. Definitely several who've had a lot of dreams and nightmares around what had occurred there. And some question revolves around that. I don't know. I haven't, I'm not going to hypnotize people or I kind of want to respect people's, where they, how far they're willing to go. And I don't know if bringing up that kind of thing for somebody today would be necessarily a good thing. But it's a good question, absolutely. And there's plenty of people out there like that have had that experience. Did the children, yes, that's a good question. Did the children experience nightmares over the years, or were they able to live normal lives? I think that's, I would say, just from my experience, I'd say about a quarter of them had nightmares over the years. I think they're all trying to live normal lives, and they're very normal people all over the spectrum. And if you've ever been to Zimbabwe and met some of the people there, they're just wonderful, grounded, warm-hearted people. Yes, okay, there's another question. Has anybody attempted to shop this documentary? Well, we're working on it. We're really working on it. It's been a lot of work to get to this point, and I just, whoever gets involved in this is not going to be disappointed. I have a great editor, a great team, a great story editor, and it's a heart film. It's something that I put a lot of my personal heart into, and the people around me also have been just wonderful support and volunteering in many ways that I wouldn't expect. Network's interest in broadcasting the final movie, yes, I have had some interest there. And I'm just trying to get it to the best venue where it could reach a wide audience. I think this film has the potential to really open people's minds and think about it in a different way. There's another question. Yeah, is the film done yet? When is it going to be out? Well, we're well on the way in the editing. And, this has primarily been a self-funded project, and it could have been completed years ago with a private funding, but that just hasn't been the case to progress it and everything. So, yeah, that's the reason. Projects take a long time. I know if you've ever seen when you watch the credits of a movie, you see hundreds of people names roll by. And they get it done in a year or two. But when you have one person or 5 people, it definitely takes a lot more time. You have to wear many hats, and you learn a lot in doing it, but it does take time. And normally a project when it's an independent stock like this, it can take 7 years. A friend of mine, Breakthrough, their first film spent 14 years to make, and it was wonderful. It was well worth the wait. And coincidentally, it was on I believe it was Rwanda. One of the things going on there. So yeah, it does take time, and it's not been for lack of effort or time for sure. It's largely been the financial part. Being able to hire the people that are needed. In your interviewing of the experiencers, did you see any personalities in them, personality, life stories after the event? Not really. They all have come across to me as just very normal people, doing all kinds of different jobs in life, and most in their late 20s, early 30s. Again, like I guess the thing that strikes me most is where they come from. Zimbabwe, Africa. It's just it's a different world over there. It's almost like literally going to another planet. It's so different from what we're used to in the Western world. I think that just touches me because they're very warm people, and their hearts are in the right place. Another one. It's great to see the story finally come to fruition. Yeah. I totally agree. I can't say how excited I've been for so many years to just get the story told. When you know something is such a great story, so many good people involved, the honesty at which people communicate how they feel. From the whole spectrum, from the children today to them back in '94, to the teachers, to the reporters. It's a really great project. So I'm going to get another question here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did you follow up with any of the investigators? Well, Cynthia Hine passed away in 2000. Dr. Mag passed away in 2004. I did get in touch with one of the men that was worked with Cynthia Hines and spoke with him, and also another investigator who came back in '97. This event has been covered by a lot of different countries, but mainly for like a short 10-minute piece, which covered the event and basically didn't really look into the deeper what happened, how it happened, what were the order of events, which is, you look, hindsight's 20/20. I mean, when looking back on it now, going back, recovering everything, looking at all the facts and the details of what was going on at the time, all over in the full spectrum as far as what was happening there, and the space program, et cetera, the political situation, all that stuff. It's easy to see where other people may have dropped the ball here and there. I'm going to have to wrap it up here soon. Somebody else asked, did you think of getting any of the witnesses hypnotized, or did you get them hypnotized? I did not, and I'm not aware that any have been hypnotized to try to get further details. But, yeah, okay. So, yeah, we're really working on when will the film be released, and the goal is for sure the end of this year. And, again, the editing is carrying on right now. And we are just trying to raise the funds necessary to make it all happen. Okay, I'm going to end the Q&A. Again, I really appreciate the questions and the interest in this film. And thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate all your help and support. And, the donations that have been made are just wonderful. And it's going to really help this film get this story get told and out to the world. So please donate if you can, if you haven't already. And if you can't, like our Facebook page and Twitter. Send it to friends, the link to the website, and help get the word out. The website is arielphenomenon.com. That's arielphenomenon.com. And those of you who are on the webpage already know that. And the Facebook page is Ariel School Documentary. And liking that page helps, of course. It just helps generate interest. And, really, really, really appreciate all the help. And thanks. Things are moving along well, and I think this will be a very important film for the age we live in. There's never been a film on this topic that has been told in such a way where it's about the people involved and not about special effects, so to speak. So, please donate if you can. Check out the gifts, get some cool gifts, and help bring this fascinating story to the world. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much from my heart, and good night. Thanks.
All right, so that's that for that, as they say. Hang on just a minute. I've got about 50,000 things here going. So if you're listening live on the Dark Matter Radio, thank you for hanging in. I'm sorry there was a little bit of sound issues with, that's Blog Talk Radio, sometimes there is. And he was on a cell phone, so it didn't make it a real clear show. They're going to try to work something out. I'll be glad to help Randy work something out with that for his next show. So if you want to bounce back on over to podcastufo.com and jump in the chat room, you are welcome to. And we are going to be opening up the phones soon, and Skype as well, because we got about 20 minutes left to this show. So I have a really good friend of mine that I've known for a number of years that happens to be in the antique and auction business, and we've known each other, like I said, for years. And one day I was working late, and I got a phone call from him thinking he was going to tell me about antiques or whatever it is. And he says to me, guess what, we have something in common. And I said, yeah, we both love antiques. And he said, no, UFOs. I just found your show. So his name is Walt, and he should be calling in any second. And I might even try to call him. Let's see if I can figure that out. And I was just trying right now, see if that happens. Okay. So bear with me, everyone. You're all troopers. So it's been a little bit of a different show, but I'm hoping that it is enjoyable for you. And here we go. Walt, are you there?
I am, Martin. How are you?
I'm good. You sound better than the last guy.
Oh, all right. I didn't know if I was going to get on Skype. I haven't used it in a while, but everything seems to be all right so far.
Yes. So, Walt, I was just telling the listening audience that, guess what? We lost our live feed. Hang on just a minute.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, but somehow
okay.
I hung up on our live feed while I was calling you, and here we go. I'm going to have to apologize for that. Sorry about that, everyone. I still don't think he's on yet. Okay, I think we're back live, and I apologize for that for the listeners that you're listening live. We had a little brief bit of silence while I was calling. It's my fault. I did it, but we are back live, and I have my good friend Walt Kalinda on from down in Gloucester, Massachusetts. How you doing, Walt?
I'm doing pretty good, Marty. The snow's starting to melt, so I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah, and we have a chat room, and it's kind of going wild tonight. There's a lot of people in it.
Awesome.
But I was telling the story about how I was busy working one night, and you called me, and I thought you were calling me about antiques or something. And you called me because you said we have something in common.
That's right. Yeah. I think we were already friends for quite a while.
Right.
And I saw something on your Facebook feed about your podcast, and I said, we have something in common. And I actually had a sighting when I was a kid, and me and let me see, I haven't talked to these guys in years. I think there was four other guys. There was Greg, Andy, Jerry, and I think Guy was there. He always hung out with us, and myself. I won't mention any of their last names. So, yeah. So you want me to roll into that?
Yeah. It's quite a. I want you to also tell, because it struck me with the feeling that it gave you. So just go ahead and just tell the story.
Sure. So we were a bunch of Catholic kids that let me get this straight. So it had to be 75 or 76 because we used to go to these roller skating parties that our school would put on. They do them like 2 or 3 times a year, roller skating, right, with 4 wheels. Remember that? So we were kind of don't tell any of the nuns, but we were kind of hellraisers, So on the way up, we even at that young age, we partied quite a bit. But this incident happened on the way back, and we were not. We were all straight and right as rain. So this is 1975, 76 or so. So to prove that I'm telling the truth about this story, I would, if I was fibbing, I would say I was the one with the girlfriend that we were dropping off at home, but I wasn't. The guy Jerry, one of the kids we hung around with, Jerry, always got all the girls, and we were dropping off one of his girlfriends. So we came back from the roller skating party, and there were some other girls. They were friends of ours, and then Jerry had a girlfriend, and we would walk the train tracks on the way back to Annie's house. So Jerry dropped off Annie, and we were out there, and he came out, and we were all standing around together. And this is It wasn't. It was a quiet street, not by any means a deserted area, but quiet out back near train tracks. And you'd walk about maybe a quarter mile and get to what you might call civilization. But it was a quiet street, and I'm not really sure which one of us. In fact, I can remember the conversation clearly, but I can't remember who said what. So all of a sudden, somebody said, "Hey, what's that?" And we looked up, and we all kind of froze, and I'm not kidding, Marty. This was the strangest experience I've ever had in my life. It was absolutely amazing. So we looked up, and we saw a yellow disc shining down on us. Imagine the moon if it didn't have any blue spots on it at all. Okay, completely round. I mean, just perfectly round and yellow. And it was up sideways like that, too, or at least it appeared to be sideways, but it was shining down on us. And we were freaked. And we had a conversation with, like, what is that? And like, man, I don't know. Like, it's freaking me out. And we're talking like that. And like, what is it? And one of us, I think it was me, said, I know what that is. Because earlier in the last, the 2 weeks, maybe month before this, there were a lot of people spotting UFOs. And it was in the news, and there was stories that were like, oh, yeah, it's a lot of people are getting helicopter beams mixed up with UFOs because helicopters have round lights. But this wasn't a helicopter. And one of us said, I know what that is. That's a helicopter. They have round lights like that. And I think it was me that said that. And then somebody else said, helicopters make noise, and they move. And so the conversation seemed like 5 minutes, but I'm really probably pretty sure it was like a minute or so. And we looked up, and we were really, so we're four Catholic schoolboys, and we're like, let's look down and see what. By the way, this was, it wasn't like super high up. It appeared to us like it looked as high up as maybe 100 or 200 feet. It wasn't like real high. And it was shining like right down, like it was right over us. But it was sideways, but yet it was shining down. So,
Wait, just a second here. It was sideways, but shining down.
It's sideways. It kind of looked like we were looking at the moon, up at the moon. We could see that it was a circle, And this is a long time ago. I recall it kind of being sideways.
Yeah, because actually you do hear of that.
Oh, excuse me?
You do hear of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the way they're tilted has nothing to do with their propulsion and moving.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know that, but and that could be, you know what? It could have been looking down on his flat. That's my memory. That's my recall. No, I'm 54, so this happened when I was like 15, 16, 75, 76. So, but I recall it being sideways. So we were all in on this together. Like, we're talking about, like, what do we do about this thing? Like, is it going to get us? What is it? And we said, let's look down and see what happens.
Kind of like an ostrich, kind of.
Right. Yeah. We were like definitely. I won't use unsavory words here, but we probably needed to change our shorts when we went home. Really, it was scary. So we did all look down, and we looked back up, and it was just gone.
And you never heard a thing.
Never heard a thing. Never. I talked to those. I'm not in touch with any. In fact, I'm going to look up, see if I can find any of these fellows on Facebook. I haven't talked to them in many, many years. But we went to school after that. On the way home, we were talking about it, and there were for Catholic school kids. So one of us, Andy, is saying, you know what? And he went to, he was a little bit more of a into the Catholic thing more than some of us, and he said, this is God punishing us, and there's a message here. And the other ones are like, oh man, I'm not even sure I saw it. And then I'm like, I don't know what it was. And the other, so we kind of, we talked about it on the way home. We were kind of scared about it. So we all lived, let me say, Greg lived on Benefit Street. This happened on Dickens Street, by the way, in Rhode Island. Greg lived on Benefit Street, so I guess we dropped him off for us. And then we all lived, I lived on Coyle Avenue in Pawtucket, and we all lived, Jerry lived on Cole Street. So and Andy lived further. So Andy walked home. Oh, poor kid. I think he was the most scared at the time. But he thought it was a message from God. So yeah. So Jerry and I had gotten home, and I'm not even sure right now if Guy was with us or not. But there was definitely Greg, Jerry, Andy, and myself. So there were at least four. Guy he used to hang around with the group, sometimes not. And so Jerry went home. Then I went home. Then Andy would have kept walking straight, and I went home. And we talked about it, what we thought it was. And until I talked to you, Marty, I mean, I remembered it. I've always remembered this. Has always been clear. I've told this story to friends a million times. And I'm not shy about it, because I'm not saying that little green men came down and we abducted we were abducted or anything. So it doesn't bother me to talk about it, but I've talked about it a lot of times. But you know what? I didn't realize until I talked to you about this maybe a year ago. You know, as kids, now we were 16, yeah, we had another, let me see. I think we had another, if we didn't close out of school that year, we graduated in this, maybe the year after. And so we were together as a group, friends that hung out for another year or so after that. And I didn't realize until I talked to you, you know what the strange thing is? We never mentioned it to each other again.
That is strange. Hey, Walt, we only have 3 minutes. I can't believe it, but the time is flying, which is good. But no, one of the questions, someone on the chat room says, OMG, that person had a very similar sighting to yours in Massachusetts around the same time, and it was low in the sky, soundless, but it blinked out. And you hear about that blinked out thing. Really something.
We didn't see this blink out, but I mean, it was, when we looked up, it probably, I mean, that's a good term, because we looked up and it was gone. So if we'd stayed looking at it, what may have happened? It might have blinked out. I mean,
yeah, sure.
You know, very, very, but that's the God's honest truth, according to the way I remember it. And that happened. And we, you know, but we never, you know, and I didn't know much about this then, or much about UFOs then, but I never thought that, you know, was there any time lost or anything like that? I don't know. We got home late. Who knows if we lost an hour or two? We would get home after the skating party at 10 o'clock. We probably, by the time we walked home, 10:30, 11. I didn't check my clock when I went in. I don't know if we lost time or anything or not. I don't remember, you know, I never had that sensation, but I never realized that we never talked about it again. And it wasn't like we were afraid to or didn't. It was almost like I'd forgotten it until I was an adult. We never thought to mention it to each other or anybody else ever again. It wasn't until my adult years that I remembered it and started talking about it. When UFOs came up in conversation, I'm like, oh, yeah, this happened then. But
hey, one more question, and then we got to wrap it up here. Have you ever had another sighting?
Yes, but I'm pretty sure I knew what it was. Real quick, my wife and I at the time were near Fort Devens in Mass, and we were going up 202 or 101 to an auction, and we saw this giant black claw in the sky. And by the time I said, "What's that?" she went, "And that." And they went by like in the blink of an eye. So we told people, they're like, "You're crazy. It looks like big giant black claws." 3 weeks later, they started breaking news stories about the stealth bomber. And these would have been going in the direction of like Fort Devens.
Yes.
And Fort Devens was known to test things like that. So I'm pretty sure that those were the stealth bombers.
Wow.
They were soundless too, but now that, you know, I think that's, but I never seen any other, anything like what I saw that night again. No.
Well, hey, Walt, thanks so much.
Great. Yeah, great talking to you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it was good seeing you yesterday. We actually hung out yesterday for a little while.
That's right.
But anyway, thanks so much, and thanks for telling your story. I always like to have people that have different stories, and this is a good one. And it's really great that it actually rung home to someone that is right in the chat room.
Yeah, well, I'll have to keep closer eye on the chat room. I do watch it, listen to the shows, just about every show. So, hey, thanks for putting out a great podcast, Marty. We'll catch up with you soon, all right?
You bet. All right, you take care. So that's it for the show. I want to thank everyone for helping out today. Alejandro Rojas with the news. Our guests, we had 3 of them, and that is starts out with Thom Reed. Then we have Randal Nickerson. He's actually live streaming. He wasn't actually an active guest, but hope you enjoyed that, even though the sound quality wasn't so good. And then my good friend Walt Kalinda down in Gloucester, Mass. You can hassle him by going to his auction down there at Cape Ann Auctions and ask him what he thinks about UFOs in front of all his customers. See what happens. Anyway, thanks again. And a few more people to thank. We have Peggy Shunning for managing the Facebook page. And you can like us on Facebook for all the latest UFO news, astronomy news, and all that. And lastly, I want to thank you, the listener. You are the supporter, and you're the one that listened this far for $1 a month or more, and I really do appreciate that. And we'll be back next week on the Dark Matter Radio Network. You can always listen there for free live from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can have fun in the chat room. The chat room was full of lots of intelligent and fun people this evening. Oh, yeah, and don't forget, we do have T-shirts on our website. You can go there, podcastufo.com, and order a T-shirt. And I'll give you a discount if you just email me at martin@podcastufo.com. This is it for the show, and we'll see you here next week. Keep your eyes to the sky. See you now. Bye-bye.